Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate all you do and being able to join us on this orientation. And thank you, carryover commissioners. Thank you, Tammy, and others for keeping this all going and keeping us kind of heading in the same direction. We sure appreciate it. I apologize for being a little late, double booked, had a very good cabinet meeting up at the Capitol this morning, and now get to join the commissioners, and as we all get to learn and go through the items and be ready for our first kind of full commission meeting. We've already done one by phone, so I will turn it over. Are you in charge, Kevin? I'll turn it back to you.
Well, for now, I guess I am. So commissioners, the people on this call are people that you will likely be dealing with a lot in the commission meetings and the conference calls. And for the purposes of this meeting, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to approach this with bite-sized chunks instead of inundating you with hours and hours of material. We thought that you would likely get more out of it. So let's go through and do introductions of Mdt staff real quick, and I'll just call on people in the order that I see them on my screen. So Mike Boselman.
Good morning, Mike Boselman. I'm acting deputy director, and I apologize. I'm trying to get my video to work. I'll figure it out here. Good morning.
Thanks, Mike. Jake Gettle.
Hey, good morning, commissioners. Thanks, Kevin. Jake Gettle. I'm the construction engineer for the department and look forward to working with you and presenting later this morning.
Thank you, Jake. And Valerie Wilson.
Oh, thanks. Good morning, Kevin. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Valerie Wilson, and I currently serve as chief counsel for the Department of Transportation. And I'm going to give you maybe a little bit longer introduction. So this July, I'll be 30 years practicing law. 12 of those have been with the Department of Transportation. I previously served in the Montana Army National Guard, was an NCO, and did that for 6 years. And I also have just a good feeling about this new training that we're going to do. It seems like this will be very effective, and look forward to working with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Val. Lori Ryan.
Good morning, commissioners. This is Lori. I serve as the Transportation Commission Secretary for the Department of Transportation.
Thanks, Lori. Rod Nelson.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Rod Nelson. I'm Billings District Administrator. I've been working for the department for about 32 years now, going for another 32 years.
Yeah.
Not just kidding. But I've been in my current position for about 2 years now. So nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Rod. Sorry to cut you off. Dwayne Cayley.
Good morning, commissioners. Dwayne Cayley here. I'm the chief engineer. I've been with the department now 27 years. And full disclosure, I actually followed Lauren. He was my boss in a couple of different locations. So with that, welcome aboard, everybody. And I hope you enjoyed today. And like Kevin, I'm looking forward. I like the makeup of this commission. I've never seen 2 engineers on the commission, so that's going to be interesting. And I'm actually excited about it. So welcome aboard, and I hope you all enjoy.
Thanks, Dwayne. Bill Fogarty.
Good morning, commissioners. Bill Fogarty. I'm the Mdt Butte District Administrator. I've been with the department for about 32 years. Looking forward to working with you.
Thanks, Bill. Jim Wingeter.
Thank you, Kevin. Good morning, commissioners. I am Jim Wingeter. I am the District 3 Great Falls District Administrator, which is, by the way, the greatest district in the state. Lauren and I are looking forward to working with each other and getting a lot accomplished. It's nice to meet all of you, and I'm looking forward to meeting with all of you also in the future. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Jim. Carol Strizich.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Carol Strizich. I'm the Acting Rail Transit and Planning Division Administrator. I've been with the department for just about 22 years now. And welcome.
Thank you, Carol. Jim Skinner.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Jim Skinner. I'm the Policy Program and Performance Analysis Bureau Chief in the Rail Transit and Planning Division. I've been with the department for about 27 years, and I've been in the Planning Division that whole time. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. And Bob Foson, he's on the phone today. Bob?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Bob Foson. I am the District 1 Administrator. I will argue with Jimmy a little bit on we are the first district for a reason. I've been with the department since '94. Looking forward to working with everybody. I apologize for hopefully I'm coming through clear and you can see the image I tried to turn on with the phone. So again, welcome. Look forward to working with everybody.
Thanks, Bob. You came in loud and clear. Last but not least, Shane Mintz.
Good morning, everybody. Missoula District's second to only Glendive. Thought I should say that right up front. I see Commissioner Sansifer is agreeing with me. I've been the Glendive District Administrator since 2011.
Thank you, Shane. So again, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, you'll be working with these people quite a bit as we get into it. So if there are not any questions, I think the next thing we do here is hand it over to Jim Skinner. Is that correct?
I think Val was going to say a few things up front.
Okay, Val.
Oh, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen and let's see. So are you seeing the agenda for today's orientation?
No, we're
Negative.
still on.
Negative. Rats.
Val, do you want me to share it? Oh, there you go.
Thanks, Dwayne. So I just wanted to start by walking you through some of the information that Lori provided to you. And so the first thing on our list was the Memorandum of Transportation Commission duties and authorities. And although this went out under my signature, it's actually a compilation of work by the planning folks, the engineering, and the legal unit. And this is just for your reference, your kind of quick reference to orient you to some of the key duties and authorities and where you can find those. So, so it's broken down into the governance section. It refers you to Title II, which actually creates the Transportation Commission. The next section is on jurisdiction, talks about the Commission's authority to designate the public highway systems, talks about other things that involve jurisdiction like setting control access and setting special speed zones. And then there's the section on funding authority, which is set forth in Section 3, rail crossing authority. And then finally, and what we'll be talking about mostly today, and actually Jim Skinner will be talking about mostly today, is the contracting piece, is the Commission's authority to select projects, and then in certain cases to delegate its authority to local governments. So, so just wanted to let you know that this is actually just for your reference and convenience. The next memorandum that you received was one that was signed by Jake Gettle, our construction engineer, and that's on alternative contracting. And that will be discussed as the engineering section presents their information for you today. There's two other pieces of information that you don't have, but I ordered you a Title 60 because that's where your authority primarily lies. And so these will be either sent to you or if you're going to be at the meeting next week, we'll just hand them out then. And the fact book was actually linked, but Carol has copies of this that we'll either, again, send out or provide to you next week. So that was just kind of an outline, and I think that Jim's section of block of instruction is going to be very interesting. So we're going to turn it over to him. And Jim, I'll quit sharing.
Okay, thanks, Val. Let's see if I can make this work. Okay, can you guys see the slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm just going to start with a kind of a walk through this slide, and what I tried to do is make this pretty simplified, but want to say right up front, there's really a lot of detail behind all of the processes that are shown here. And what I kind of want to do is show what our annual cycle is, and maybe this will help you actually sort of place some of the things that you're going to see in the upcoming meetings where it sort of fits into this whole process. I guess the other thing is if you have questions throughout, please stop me. I'd like this to be a conversation. I'm going to try to go through this stuff pretty quick so that we don't get too much into the weeds. I think that in the future, there are things here that we will need to explain at a greater level of detail, and there are things here that the Commission will be involved with in this process. And so I'll try to touch on things very quickly, but if you get into, if you have questions, let me know. So I think to start with, right at the top, to try to figure out, since this is sort of a cycle, I'd figure out where to start it with, and I decided to do the TCP last year. And so the TCP is the tentative construction plan for a 5-year period. And it's a project-specific plan where we actually match a project that's under development, construction phase, up to funding available in that particular program, so we can actually construct a project in the year when we actually plan to deliver it, and then also have funding for it. And so it's sort of our look forward on what we've got that's under development, the funding that we've got available, and how we're planning to deliver that. And it is a snapshot. Things do change, but we do have an approval process. The Commission's involved in that. And so that's our starting point for sort of this discussion. And I'm going to go down the project selection side of this first and try to explain what each of those things are, and then I'll do the TCP fund plan development side. And so starting with the planning gap analysis, following the TCP, you can see it was done in October of last year when we got that approved. Early this year, we start looking at that 5-year plan, and we start looking at the projects that we've got in the out years in the plan. Now, the things that we're looking for are projects that are going to help us meet our performance goals. We have performance goals at the state level for pavement and bridge condition. We have performance goals related to safety. We have performance goals at the federal level for pavements and bridges. And so what we start to do is look for projects that are going to meet the funding that we have lined up for infrastructure investments by program, by work type, and the programs are typically tied to a system in the districts. Some of the other programs aren't. So what we do is an assessment of the out years of that TCP. And we look for places where we need projects to start to be developed where we haven't started them yet. So say, in District 1, we need a certain amount of capital construction on the interstate, and through year 3, we're pretty good, but in year 4 and year 5 and in the out years, we don't really have anything lined up. What we would do is consider that a gap. And Paul Johnson on my staff, he's the one who manages most of this. He would go to the district and say, hey, District 1, we need a new project nomination for the interstate for capital construction for about this amount in investment level. And I believe he just started that for this year. So the districts have probably already heard from Paul at some level. And he'll do that for all of the systems and all of the different programs that we have. And so what that'll result in is, so we request that nomination, and then the districts will actually identify projects. To be very clear, planning doesn't identify projects. What we do is say we need to make a certain investment in the system by work type, And the districts are the ones who actually select and nominate projects, because the districts are the ones who know what the local issues are. They're more familiar with the roadways, the individual segments of roadways, and they'll use the resources that they have from the agency, but then also take public input. They'll also work with their commissioners and identify the projects that should be put forward that best meet the needs of the districts and also meet our performance needs. That project nomination will be submitted to planning, and we review that to make sure that it is consistent with what we requested. And assuming it's consistent, then what we do is actually put together a commission agenda item to take a new project nomination to the commission. And what we're going to ask the commission to do is to add that project to the program. And that goes back to some of the commission statutory requirements or authorities for selecting projects. So what we're going to actually ask the commission to do is select that project to meet that performance goal. We'll be looking at a few of those later as we go through the agenda. And so we'll take it in front of the commission, and if the commission approves that request or that nomination, then what we would do is add that project to the program. And there's a few other steps. The majority of the business that we do is federal aid projects. And so once the commission has approved a project, we've added it to the program. There are some steps that MDT has to do to actually get that project federal aid eligible. We have what's called a STIP document, which is a federally required document that shows basically it lists all the projects by name and by phase. And it's a document that fulfills some public involvement requirements and also some funding requirements. And then once we get the STIP done, we will get the project authorized. That would be a request from MDT to authorize funding. And then once we get the funding authorized, we actually have a federal aid project then. And what that allows us to do is start a number of our processes. But for this conversation, the most important one of those is it allows a project schedule to be developed. And when we get down to the draft TCP, I can explain why that's important. Went through that pretty quick. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to move over to the
Jim.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Lauren. Could you say what STIP stands for again?
Oh, sorry. Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. So the STIP is a federally required document. Thanks for asking that, Lauren. I kind of blew through that pretty quick. It's a document where we list each project by phase, and we use it for a number of things. One is to show it's a public involvement process, and then we also use it to show fiscal constraint, where FHWA will look at the projects that we're proposing versus the projected revenues that we're going to get through the program to make sure that we're not programming too many new projects that we can't reasonably fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks for asking that. So I'm going to move over to the TCP fund plan development process, and you can see the timeframes where these activities happen, and they sort of correlate, but they're two separate parallel processes. And so about the same time of year when we're doing the gap analysis, the management system owners who inventory our system start looking at their latest inventory and doing a analysis of infrastructure condition. And mostly this is a bridge and pavement condition review. And so these different offices are doing almost continual data collection. And so what they'd be looking at right now is they'd be looking at the past year's collection for their analysis to see what our infrastructure condition is. There are several reports that we have to submit. So this is a cyclical process, and based on that information and based on the planned projects that we had in the last TCP, we start to do an analysis of what our pavement needs and what our different bridge needs are based on providing the right treatment at the right time, which we evaluate and come up with recommendations through our asset management process, which we call PX3, or the performance programming process. And what that is it looks at our different pavement conditions, looks at our bridge conditions, and what we do is we prioritize maintaining the investments that have already been made through preservation activities. And so what we try to do is preserve the investment we've made through different treatments, and we come up with a funding mix that is going to preserve that infrastructure condition. And so there's trade-off analysis, and there's also there's quite a bit that goes into that. And this is one of those things that you could really spend a lot of time explaining, but we look at degradation curves, and there's different recommendations for different pavements and different life cycles for treatments and those types of things. It takes all of that into consideration and develops an optimal investment scenario or investment recommendation for our systems to achieve our performance goals. We take those allocation recommendations. Again, this is managed by the project analysis section, which is Paul Johnson's area. We put that together, and we actually present that to the commission. That would happen later this year, and he has a fairly extensive presentation he'll provide on all of the assumptions that have gone into developing those funding recommendations, the projected performance. He also will put forward information for funding allocations for any set-aside programs and some other things that we have to make funding decisions on. So that would all be presented to the commission for concurrence in advance of developing the final fund plan. The allocations usually that are most discussed would be by district, by work type, by system. And I'll touch on systems here in just a sec, because I don't want to go too deep into that, but I'll just name what the systems are in a minute. So each of the districts would get a funding allocation kind of stratified that way, that then they can actually start planning around. And so once we get commission concurrence, we develop a fund plan, which is all of the detail basically behind those funding decisions. We provide that, and when I say we, the planning division provides that to the administration division as the basis for developing the next TCP. So when we get to the draft TCP, we take those funding recommendations by program, by system, by category or possibly subcategory, and then we take the projects that were in the previous TCP that have assigned schedule dates, and we take these new projects that have a new scheduled date, and that's when we start to marry the two up. We look at, we drop the previous year off, we add a new out year, and then we start to match projects with available funding in those years so that we can start to target the construction phase of these projects to have a new construction plan that extends out an additional year. The districts make the decisions on where to line things up. They do have to have a scheduled date that's feasible for when they want to put the project, and they also have to have funding available for where they want to put that project in that tentative construction plan. And then we have a meeting at the end of the year. And so the districts will work with the commissioners throughout this process. And when we ultimately all the districts come together, the commission will come together, and we will have a TCP meeting where all of this is discussed. And ultimately what we would do is ask for the commission's concurrence in that final TCP, and that establishes the new tentative construction plan, and then that would go to the top of this table, and then this process starts again. And I just want to pause there for questions because I'm moving through things pretty quick. Okay.
I guess I would add, Jim, that you'll become familiar with this as we go through the process in the TCP. And also as part of that, Paul Johnson will present the PX3 program that we have to go into more detail about how that works and how that manages our assets.
Exactly. Thanks, Kevin. And yeah, so when he presents the allocation recommendations, he will go through the PX3 process when he does that with you. And so I guess looking at the timeline that we have in this chart, you can kind of see where we are today. And so the new nominations to commissions under the project selection side, this is sort of the time frame that we're in. New nominations can come at any time during the year if something's identified that we need to start working on a project. So you will see sort of 1s and 2s for new nominations during the year. But during the March and April time is when the new, when Paul's request for nominations sort of at a program level come in. So you will start to see more project nominations coming up in the next few meetings. Any other questions on this? Okay. If there's no other questions on this, this is really all I planned to present on this today. I said a few seconds ago or a few minutes ago that I would touch on the systems, and that'll sort of lead into some of the conversation that we have when we start looking at the individual agenda items. So when we talk about system routes, there's sort of a lot to it, but at a very high level, these are systems that are roadways that the commission has designated to be on a particular system. And this is at the state level, although there are some federal systems that overlap. And just to name the systems, there's the interstate system, there's the non-interstate NHS system, there's the state primary system, the state secondary system, and the state urban system. So those are systems that you'll hear us talk about, and I'll try to point out some of these different systems on the maps when we go through the agenda items. There's one other category of road that's not on a designated system that the department's responsible for, and those are called state highways. And those are highways that the department is responsible for maintaining, but they're not on one of the commission designated systems.
Jim, what does NHS stand for?
National Highway System. And so, not to confuse it, but the interstate is on the National Highway System, and there are other routes on the National Highway System, and so that's why we designate them as the interstate. And the non-interstate NHS, if it's on the interstate, it's always going to be part of the National Highway System. Leave it open for Carol. I don't know if you have anything you want to add before I move on.
Jim, just a quick question. Do you have a couple examples of routes that are not on a system? That'd be like alcohol?
Yeah, so that would be a good one. And so, Lauren, I think usually the routes that aren't on systems, the easiest ones to think about are a lot of times frontage roads along the interstate. And so I'm thinking about off Custer Avenue. The one that comes to my mind is the one off Custer Avenue that continues the extension north of Washington Street, and everybody might not recognize that one. But usually when you see a frontage road next to the interstate, it's an access road that may have been constructed at the time of the interstate to preserve access, and a lot of times those are state highways that are not on a system. Not to get too deep into the weeds on it, but for a road to be on a particular system, there's an associated requirement that's called functional classification, and a lot of times those roads won't meet the functional classification requirement to be on a designated system.
Thank you.
Hey Jim, real quick, this is Shane Sanders. So not every frontage road though, correct? Like I'm thinking of the frontage road that used to be the primary highway between say the Big Timber and Livingston. That would still be considered part of a system, is that correct?
Yeah, and so it's not every frontage road. They're sort of a good example, but not everyone. Some of those are still on systems. Okay. So you almost have to go look at them individually to see if one's on a system or not.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, with that, I'm going to move forward. I don't have another graphic to put up. What I was going to do is walk through individual agenda items, and I believe the commissioners all received their agenda documents for the upcoming meeting. Is that right?
I did. Shane Sanders did.
Okay. Well, I plan on just walking through that document page by page for the agenda items that planning would present. Kevin, I guess I don't have anything else to put up on the screen. I don't know if you want me to try to get the agenda items, or I don't know, Lori, if you wanted to try to do that. Otherwise, we might just want to put the agenda for the commission meeting or maybe this meeting up there.
If you want to stop your screen share, then I'll share the commission agenda.
Okay, I think it's back in your hands.
Okay, can you see the agenda?
No, I get your name.
Oh, there it's coming. There it is.
There it is. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through each of these agenda items, and I'm going to try to give you an explanation of what the item's for and why it's in front of you, and then also what we're asking with each of these agenda items. And these are pretty typical of what you'll see. There's a few variations that you'll see some new things that may come up during the year, but every time that happens, we'll try to explain it to you and why it's in front of you and what we're asking for. Starting with agenda item number 1, local construction projects on state highway systems by local forces. So what this is an agenda item for work that local governments are going to do on part of that designated system. They're going to do it with their local forces, so there's not a contract involved. So this would be city forces in these instances doing this work. And why we're asking for this is under the background, we usually try to provide a reason why this falls under the Commission's jurisdiction right up front. And so you can see under, it says under MCA 62-110, setting priorities and selecting projects. So what we're trying to do is get this in front of the Commission so that the Commission can select this project. Even though the department isn't going to develop this project and we don't have any funding involved in this project, the Commission's authority is tied to selecting projects, not funding or the department's actions in this case. So just to touch on what this is a few times a year to make sure that we're following the intent of this provision in law, we actually reach out to the local governments and we ask them to provide us a list of any projects that they have planned that they're going to fund on these system routes, and that they submit that information to us so we can present it to the Commission. So that's what this is. In this case, we got a response from Kalispell and Livingston. They're going to provide 100% of the funding for these projects. MDT will participate in these projects, but not at the level of detail, obviously, if it was an MDT designed project or developed project. If we look a little further down in the summary, the cities in both instances have agreed to take on the maintenance responsibility of the projects that they're working on. So this doesn't transfer any additional maintenance liability to the department. And we put these projects together just in a list. And if you look at the next page, we've actually also mapped them out. So we've put a map that will show you where these projects are going to be located on these system routes. Ultimately, what we're asking the Commission is included in staff recommendations. And so in this case, because there's no contracting involved, it's going to be done with local forces. What we're asking the Commission to do is approve these improvements to the state highway system, which would be selecting this project pending concurrence of MDT's chief engineer. And so basically what we're asking you to do is prioritize this, but since there's no contract or awarding to be done in this, there's no additional request other than prioritizing this work. And just want to pause for any questions.
So when we prioritize this work, it has no impact on the rest of the agenda. We're basically just giving approval for these local municipalities to proceed forward. Is that how I'm understanding it? But no impact on any other planned projects or anything else that would be in the queue?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
One question that I have, does the department get involved in any kind of oversight, especially when we have projects on the national highway system? I understand having the cities work on the urban routes and things, but the NH routes are kind of designated special and usually get federal highway involvement. I was just wondering, I see a couple of these on the NH system.
So, so for the first agenda item, just want to be clear, Lauren.
Yeah.
For the first agenda item, they're all in the urban system.
Right. Next
Right.
agenda item, there's one in the NH
Yep.
system billings.
Yep, absolutely. So the department typically would be involved in providing a different level of review on NH projects, and the reason being and it's not 100%, but it's nearly 100%. MDT maintains nearly 100% of the NH in Montana. And so we would be issuing permits for the MDT maintained routes. So we would typically have a different level of review for those through our permitting process. It probably depends on the nature of the project, how involved MDT would be. I think the one on the next agenda item, and I'll skip to that here in just a sec. The next agenda item, I believe, is a overlay or a mill fill. So we might not have too much involvement on that one, but if they were going to change the nature of the roadway, we would probably be much more involved. And so for this one, if we're good with this one, should I move on to the next one?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So the one that we're just talking about for everybody else is a local construction project on state highway system contract labor. So the difference between these two is really the local forces versus contract labor. And in this case, these are still local projects, locally funded projects, but these ones, they're going to actually contract the work out. So we have to ask the commission for a little bit more on these ones. These still need to be selected by the commission, but in this case, because the locals want to use a contract, we need to ask the commission to delegate their authority to let and award that contract to that local government. And there's a provision in statute that allows the commission to do so, and that's the statute that's listed here, 62-111. So basically we're asking for both actions on this one. Add the project to the program, or to select the project, select the project, and in this case also delegate that authority. The rest of this is mostly the same. The locals are going to pick up the maintenance responsibilities. The locals are going to provide 100% of the funding. Obviously the project list is a little different, and you can see we got a much longer list of projects for this request. So the project that Lauren asked about, I'm just going to, the very first one on the list is King Avenue West, which is on a national highway system route. And if we want to look at the map, I can show you how you can see that on the map. Is for Billings, you can see the different projects. Looks like there's 5 projects on this list, but if you look at the one that's on King Avenue, which is in the lower left-hand corner, you can see the route number, and it's got an N in front of it. That designates that that's a national highway system route for us. And so, Lauren, I think in that project, I'm not aware of what our involvement is. It's an overlay project, so they're not really changing the nature of the system. In that one, we would have to typically issue a permit to them, to the local government for the encroachment, which would take care of any environmental review and any design review. Something like an overlay would probably be handled at the district level unless they send it to Helena for a heightened level of review. And Rod, I don't know if you know anything more about that particular project or have anything else you'd want to say about that.
Yeah, so I think you described it quite well. The one thing that I would add is that as part of that permitting process, we would ensure that certain specifications were included on that contract that would be compatible with the specifications that we would have for an NH route.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was wondering about.
Okay.
Can I ask just a follow-up question or two on that? So
certainly.
In this situation, the city engineering department, I assume is taking the lead, issuing the contracts and then providing or requiring the construction oversight and certifications and all those types of things. Does MDT actively participate in construction oversight where we're contracting these down to local governments, or are we just taking in as-built record drawings and project files upon completion and acceptance by the local government?
So I'll answer that from my perspective, but then I would ask the districts to certainly weigh in. So for The department has several different ways that we handle these, and we'll run into a couple of different projects a little later in the agenda that have a different level of review provided. So the department has for, if you look at the scope of these projects, most of these are a little bit smaller scope, not all of them, but for a higher level scope project where a third party is going to be doing work on our system, we have a higher level review. It's called the System Impact Action Process, which is a coordinated review through the Helena offices and with the district. And so on those projects that are nominated for that review, we do quite a bit more thorough review than we do on some of the other ones. So that's the review side. And then on oversight, it depends on the nature of that project. Sometimes we do more oversight, sometimes we do less. And we typically defer to the districts based on the potential risk associated with that project on the system. And so sometimes we've actually had, it depends on the nature, we've had heightened level of oversight to where we've had Mdt staff. It's pretty rare to provide that direct oversight, but in most of these we'll have an agreement. Sometimes we'll also require an agreement with the contractor specifically so that we can actually deal with the contractor if we need to while they're out there. We typically defer out of the Helena office on that heightened review to the district to decide the level of oversight that's needed. And with that, I would ask any of the districts to weigh in.
Yeah, so this is Rod, and Jim, once again, I think you described that quite well. Typically, if we're dealing with a project on the NH system, we would have somebody here in the district that would be assigned that project and would be going out, making sure that things are being constructed in accordance with the permit requirements. So I hope that answers your question.
It does.
Yeah, I guess this is my last follow-up on this item. Are we being duplicative in oversight with the local governments? Generally speaking, these local municipalities, whether they contract in-house or they sub these projects out to consultants, require full-time construction oversight throughout the project. If that's being required by the local government and MDT is also providing the same type of oversight, I guess my question is, are we duplicating efforts and costing either the state or the local government unnecessary spending through these projects? And I'm sure that there are a number of requirements that we have from federal highways as to why we do that, but that I guess is where I'm going with this series of questions.
Right. So I understand now, Scott, and this is Rod again. So no, we don't duplicate inspection efforts. If a project is permitted, it is to be inspected by the city or possibly a consultant that the city hires. We would not be performing those same inspections that they do, but rather we would have somebody that would go on site and make sure that in fact the inspection is happening. So no, as far as duplicating efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add, that's been my experience as well. I haven't, I manage the heightened level review here in Helena when those take place, and I haven't heard concerns with duplication of process on this.
I have another question. I see Westby's got a thing in here. Does Westby have a city engineer for public works?
Yeah, this is Shane. Not really. I mean, I think they do have a guy that works part-time for them.
Okay. I just saw a project on Montana 5 there. And I was just wondering, yeah, how Westby was going to provide those services. That's all.
And Lauren, this is Dwayne. Typically what you find with those smaller communities is they have a term contract with one of the consultants out there. I know Great West does a lot of that, and various other consulting firms as well. So that's who they'll use as their consulting or their engineer.
Okay.
Okay. Any other
Thank you.
questions? Okay. If no other questions on that agenda item, we'll move to the next one. Okay, this is agenda item number 3. And so this one's a little different. This is a construction project on a state highway system, Billings Clinic, Bozeman. So this is a third party, not a local government, who's going to be, who's planning to do this work. And the background, you can see that this refers back to setting priorities and selecting projects, which is what we'd be asking the commission to do in this case, is to select this project and these improvements. And so this is a project that came through that heightened level review that I mentioned a few minutes ago, called the System Impact Action Process, where we have a fairly large development asking for access to one of the state highways. And it was nominated for review through our process. So we essentially took a higher level of interest in the review of this. We may have had to have additional traffic review, or maybe additional hydraulics review, or whatever office needed to be involved. We coordinate with those offices, including the districts, in all instances. And so what we do is we work with those developers to identify what they need for access to serve their proposed development. And then we also look at what the impacts associated with that are going to be on the existing system. And we have a couple goals with this heightened level review. One is to protect the taxpayers' investment in the transportation system. And the second part of that is to provide effective access for the development that's going on. And when we're protecting the taxpayers' investments, we're looking at safety, operations, and also the capacity of the facilities that are out there. And through the review process with the Billings Clinic, typically what we will do is ask them to provide a traffic analysis and recommendations for any mitigations to serve their approach in this case. And in this case, what they proposed was the installation of a westbound left turn lane on Valley Center Road, which is a state highway. It's a state, well, it's an urban route at this point, I believe. Yep, it's an urban route. And they would provide all of the funding to make that installation. They would develop the plans, and we would review the plans and ultimately have to approve those plans, and then all of the other modifications and other aspects of this, including traffic control and everything that goes along with them actually doing this work on the system. MDT maintains this urban route today, and since they're adding pavement out there with, we wouldn't want them to try to take over maintaining a westbound left turn lane part of the roadway. So we worked with our maintenance staff, and they agreed that we would take over the maintenance of this additional pavement that's out there. So in this case, what we would be asking is for the commission to select this project as a priority for the system. We're not going to ask for any delegation in this one. The state statute that covers delegation of authority is very clear that it applies to local governments, but not to third parties. So in this case, what we would do is rely on our permitting processes and just ask for the commission's approval for this project. Any questions for this one? Okay, if none, I'll move on. Agenda item number 4. So this is a little bit different. This is very similar to the second one that was a list. This is a construction project on state highway system with contract labor. This is an individual project rather than being included in that list, because this one went through that higher level review through the systems impact process. And so in this project, which is a Bollinger Road intersection in Belgrade, we're going to be asking for the commission's approval to select the project and also delegate the authority, since it is a local government. The improvements in this one, you see we have a description of them. It's sidewalk, turning lanes, curb gutter, and ADA upgrades at this intersection. This is in Belgrade. The local government's going to provide 100% of the project funding. MDT will participate in the design review, which we've already initiated and is underway. This will require permits from MDT as well. And when you get to the paragraph about maintenance, you see that MDT will assume all maintenance and operational responsibilities associated with the roadway. So like that last one where there's pavement out there, there's additional pavement, we will assume the maintenance responsibilities with it. But the City of Belgrade is going to be responsible for maintaining the other non-roadway features, which are like pedestrian facilities and sidewalks and other things like that that they're going to install. And so in this case, what we're going to ask is for the Commission to approve these modifications to the system and to approve this work or this project, and also ask the Commission to delegate its authority to the local government to let and award a contract, pending Chief Engineer concurrence. And for this one to explain the pending Chief Engineer concurrence, what we do is we make sure that we have all of our bases covered from a technical review essentially, and then my staff would coordinate with Dwayne and his staff to make sure that they've met all of our requirements from a design side. Any questions on this one? Okay, I'll move on to agenda item number 5. This one is similar in what we're asking for, but this project is a little bit different than any that we've seen. And so this is a construction project on the state highway system, contract labor. This is the Mullen Road Build Grant project in Missoula. And so we'll be asking for the Commission's approval to add the project or to select the project, and also delegate authority on this one. So this project's a little bit different because this includes federal funds that the city and the county applied for a grant for an improvement project in the Mullen Road area. And their project touches MDT's facilities in various places. You can see that they're listed here at Mullen Road, George Elmer Drive, West Broadway, and Mary Jane Boulevard. And so MDT is participating in the review through that systems impact process that I described earlier on this one. This is going to be 100% funded by others, but it's going to be a mix of local funds and those other federal funds. The federal funds received for this grant were awarded directly to the city and county, not MDT, so MDT is not responsible for administering those funds. The locals are working directly with FHWA on the administration of those funds and project development. Project will have to go through our full design, our design review process, and they'll also have to get permits from us. And basically what we're asking for is the Commission's approval to select this project and also delegate authority to the locals to award a contract for this project. In the map, you can see where the project, if you look at the project map, the locals project sort of encompasses the whole area between these two routes, which are Mullen Road and West Broadway. These are just the places where they touch our facilities. So the overall scope of the project is quite a bit bigger than where it touches us. Any questions?
Just a question on here. Are these, the city got the, or the city county applied, got the funds separately? So they're administering the design and things, and we're only reviewing it where they intersect our system, correct?
Yep. So the city county, and I'm not sure who was the lead and who was the supporting. I'm not sure who the ultimate grant agreement with FHWA is with, but it was the local governments working together in a partnership to apply for and receive those funds. And they're called Build Grant funds. They are through the USDOT, and so they received the award directly, and so they're working through the design and will be responsible for design, construction, and all of it. And okay. So yeah, so we're just reviewing to make sure that where they touch our system, they're going to meet our requirements.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Okay. Okay, so on to agenda item number 6, if there's no other questions. So this one is sort of related to the one that we just talked about. And so this is a little different than any of the ones that we've covered so far. This is an MDT project. And so this is falls under the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which is one of the federal fund categories that the department receives. And under the background, you can see it describes a little bit of what the program is about, and it's pretty much about what it sounds like. This is a safety program, and project selection through the safety program is pretty prescribed as far as process, and it ultimately comes down to it's based on benefit cost analysis for us to use these funds at a particular location. And this is a case where we've coordinated with the local government where we have a safety project eligible intersection that is adjacent to where they're doing the build project work. And so what we've done is coordinate with them so that this safety project and that build grant project will complement each other. And so this is for an intersection improvement project on Broadway. And ultimately, the safety program has done everything that they need to do to identify this project, to determine eligibility for these funds, and to prioritize this as work in their program. And now what they're asking the commission to do is to approve adding this project to MDT's program. And so what this would do is this would go back as like a new nomination in that flow chart that I talked about before. It would be a new nomination before the commission, and if we add this to the program, then we can take care of the federal authorization, and what that allows is Mdt staff to start working on a federal aid project at this location. The only real difference here than a usual nomination is that this project and the project that we just looked at the local government, the footprints of them overlap, and they've been coordinated with each other. And do you have any questions? And Dwayne, this is your program. I don't know if you have anything you want to say about it.
Not really, but I guess I can if you want. But the safety program is built on a benefit cost ratio for the most part. However, we have done a couple of rather large initiatives. Road departure study went out and identified certain characteristics, which has now allowed us to do more systemic type work. So if we see curves without crashes on them, but they match curves that have had crashes, we can go address those curves, and we don't have to wait for crashes to happen on them. And we get about 25 million in this program each year. So if you have questions, feel free.
Dwayne, can you give me just a high level on what your cost benefit ratio is? Like what goes into that?
So it's built on the cost is the cost of the repair. So like reconstructing a curve or signage, whatever the cost of the improvement is proposed to be. And the benefit is based on the crashes that we believe will be mitigated by that improvement. For example, a fatality, I believe, is assessed and it's set by NHTSA, not by MDT. It's a national number. I believe a fatality is around 5 million. So if we can alleviate one fatality, then we're eligible to spend up to about $1 million, or 5 million, sorry. Typically, most of the projects we end up funding have a BC of 2 or greater, because what we do is we go identify a number of sites throughout the state, and we start with the highest BC, and we go down until we run out of money, and typically we run out of money right around that 2.0.
Okay. And I assume all those, like you said, all those values are given to us from the federal government and applied based on our own traffic information and crash data?
Yep, we use crash modification factors that again are set up nationally. However, we have modified those through our roadway departure plan. We have modified those a little bit for Montana specific. Those crash modification factors give us, using our formula, give us an idea of how many of those types of crashes we're going to be able to alleviate by making that improvement. So for example, if we widen the shoulder from say 2 feet up to 6 feet, the crash modification factor, and I honestly don't know what it is off the cuff, but the crash modification factor will show us that we may reduce 20% of roadway departure crashes. Then we apply that to the number of crashes we've had in the past, and that allows us to figure out here's our ultimate cost savings and crashes that we experience.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is this using the federal highways, kind of that safety manual?
Yep, Lauren, you're right on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Dwayne. And just to point to the commissioners to some additional information, you'll see the attachments are a little different for this agenda item because we do have more information. So there are several attachments that the local project agenda items don't have. This one also has a fact sheet for proposed MDT projects, which is sort of an area map, and then it has different things associated with this project, commission meeting date, project name, UPN, that's just our project numbering system for this project, the district, the county, the signed route, which is Broadway in this case, MDT route number, N132 shows you it's a national highway system route, and then it also shows the scope of work and the estimated project costs and the anticipated fund source. If no other questions, I'll move on to agenda item number 7. Sorry, hold on a sec. I'm looking at the agenda on the screen, and my agenda number is, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the right one. So Surface Transportation Program, Urban. I looked up and saw Bridge, and I thought I was on the wrong one. So this is an urban program project. This is again an MDT project and a request for the commission to add this project to the program so that we can start work on it. So the urban program is a little bit different. Dwayne just explained how we determine that the safety funds are used, and we have a different way that we determine how, say, the interstate funds and bridge funds, which will be next, how those are used. The urban program in statute, this is an allocation that we provide to local governments, the urban areas. There's 19 urban areas in the state, and statutorily they receive an allocation of funding, and the funds don't actually go to them, but they receive an allocation of funds set aside for their use based on population. And so the local governments then have the opportunity to prioritize those funds on improvements on the urban system routes in their urban area. And this typically requires local process. They usually go through some local prioritization process, which we will, when these projects come forward, show that process has been complete to the commission. And so what we're asking for here is the same as the previous MDT projects, for this to be added to the program, this project to be added to the program. But you'll see that there's a write-up here about the estimated total funds and the scope of the project. And so the urban program, their urban allocations aren't necessarily enough, or aren't usually enough, to fund a project every year. So what they do is they save their allocation up. And like I say, that allocation isn't handing them the funds, but what it does is it allows them to build a balance in their allocation to move a little larger project when they've accrued enough funding in this set aside to actually develop and deliver a project that they want to. And so what you'll see here, this explanation is that the estimated total project cost for all phases of this project is $3.5 million. Their annual allocation is $315,000, but what they've done is they've saved their annual allocation, and their anticipated project year is 2026. So by the time that they roll around to 2026, they're estimated to have enough funding saved up to deliver this project from their annual allocation. And it's a little more complicated than that without getting into the weeds. The urban program has some specific accommodations for borrowing against future allocations to allow them to actually develop a project of a reasonable size because they get generally such a small allocation. And I don't want to go into that. That might be something that we want to explain in the future. But The request here is to add this project to the program, and staff have looked at it and determined that upon their planned delivery date, they will have enough of an allocation to fund this project. Carol is very involved in this program, and Carol, I don't know if you want to say anything more.
I think the only thing I would add is that, and you noted this already, is that these projects are nominated through the local planning process, and in some cases that's a real formal process. In others, it is just simply local coordination between the city government and the county government within an urban area. And you'll notice attached to this particular agenda item is concurrence from both the city and the county nominating this particular project.
Question for Shane, District 2 guy. It looks like that part of this overlays the contract labor agenda item number 4. I guess probably the easiest way to refer to it. Are these going to be concurrent, or is this chunk of road going to be torn up twice, or this chunk of road going to be impacted twice? I guess between that agenda item number 4 with the curves and so on, and then a separate time down the road with this project. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I was aware of that. They are overlapping, and the one he's talking about is the Bollinger Road intersection improvements. And I think what would happen is, I believe the Bollinger Road intersection improvement project would go probably as soon as the locals can actually deliver that. And then this project would be in 2026. And what we would be looking to do is make sure that we weren't doing the same work out there twice. And that's where our urban project would need to be coordinated with the improvements that they're making at that intersection. I assume what would happen is we would try to make these two limits match rather than having overlap, but it depends on what's needed for that transition out there.
Jim, this is Bill. Well, that's correct, and that Bollinger improvements will be constructed first, and then that will not be included in the urban nomination. The Main Street, they'll skip through that section and leave it in place.
Thanks.
As I think about it, one other thing I failed to mention on these MDT projects that are different than the local projects, these will come back to the commission for award. So what we're requesting right now is just so that we can add them to the program and start working on them, but these would be coming back to you at the time of award. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. If no other questions, I'll move on to agenda item number 8, which is the last one for me. And this is a bridge project, a program project. And this is a similar situation where this is an MDT project, MDT developed project, and we would be asking for the commission to add this to the program. Pretty simple project here. It's a surface transportation bridge program. This one would be on a primary system route. And this is one where the bridge program has identified a need where they want to start working on this project rather than waiting for our annual nomination cycle. And if we look at the scope of this, it refers to scour countermeasures for bridge piers. And essentially this is one that they've identified. You'll see quite a few bridge projects come through. The bridge program is something that we really focus on. Bridges have a lot of risk associated with them, so we're trying to make up ground and make sure that our bridges are in the best shape that we can. And so this is just another request to add another project to the program. That's the request we would have for the commission. Any other questions?
Thank you, Jim. So agenda item number 9, I believe, is Dwayne Cayley's.
So Kevin, we've been at it for what, an hour and 15 minutes. You want to take a quick break or plow on?
What's the pleasure of the commission?
I'm open to hear from the other commissioners. I'm okay to plow on.
Yeah, I would say let's continue.
Concur.
Okay. I'm good with that. So agenda item number 9 is certificates of completion, and commissioners, this is in accordance with MCA 60-2-111. It's your authority to award and let the contract. And long and short, the certificates of completion are our notification or certification to you all that everything is done, the project is complete, all requirements have been met, we've certified all the materials, all the labor certs are all in, and it's the final step in closing out the contract and releasing the contractor. It's not a huge thing, but the one thing that you may want to watch for is when we hand you the certificates of completion, it will show the original bid amount and the final bid amount. One thing to have in mind is when we bid contracts, we bid them with estimated quantities. So yes, we designed it. Yes, we believe these are the reasonable quantities for the project, but again, they are an estimate. They're not exact. We work with the contractor in site conditions, and those quantities will adjust throughout the project. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. Also keep in mind that we're not showing you all of them, but a fair number of these projects do end up with change orders, and change orders are for changing site conditions or an overrun or underrun in quantities, depending on the specs. But if you guys ever have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. We may not have the answer right away because we are working on a number of projects, but we will get you the answer. There is one agenda item that is not on here, which is atypical. It's not normal, and that is speed studies. I'm not going to go through the process today. I'll wait until we actually have one to present to you guys. But I will tell you that speed studies are one of the more challenging things that you'll deal with on the commission. They are highly contentious and challenging. Mainly for Lauren and his input, but in the past we used to take agenda item number 11 and 12 and 13 to the commission as agenda items. They're no longer agenda items, they're informational purposes for you guys. Change orders, we kind of took the commission out of them, and the reason for that is change orders have to be very timely. To keep the contractor up and running, we have to issue those and get those done in a timely manner. To bring them into the commission and get your approval in the process would be very challenging and daunting at best. So we worked with the commission in the past, and we removed that approval. We present them to you all for your information, and if you have questions, please feel free to ask. But again, we just didn't think it was appropriate to bring them to you, because at that point in time the work's pretty much done, and if you chose to not approve one, it could be catastrophic. Letting lists are basically a notification of the dates that we're putting projects out for letting. Please understand that those are very dynamic. It's dynamic because of things like environmental permitting and right-of-way and a few other issues at the last minute could slow down or change the letting date. Typically, we're very good at getting all the projects out in the year that we're going to say they're going out. However, they may move from letting date to letting date. And last but not least is liquidated damages. We do have an old spec out there that we're still trying to get through that allowed contractors to bring liquidated damages to the commission for a modification by the commission. You could either hold the number of days, or you could actually reduce it. We have changed that spec. They now have to go through the claims process to challenge days charged and liquidated damages. But there still are a few older contracts out there with the old liquidated damages spec in it that does allow the contractor to come to the commission and challenge the liquidated damages. Please understand, and I'll go into more detail when and if we have one, but please understand that if you do waive liquidated damages, either part or all, it does end up in federal non-par. The federal FHWA will not participate if we waive those damages. And furthermore, the other thing I'll add is that we have had liquidated damages and our ability to charge them challenged by a contractor. And we took that all the way to the state Supreme Court, and MDT did prevail. We have the right to charge those and recoup our, essentially our administrative costs for a contract running longer than it was or did. With that, I'm going to shut up and turn it over to Jake, and he's going to talk to you about one of the unique things that we have out there, but also is receiving a fair amount of angst right now. So Jake, over to you, buddy.
Hey, Dwayne, can I ask a quick question before we move on there, based on the stuff you just talked about?
Sure,
Shane. So I see in November, you know, our growth rate, if you will, overrun is about 9.63%, and December about 3.08%. Is there some figure where we go, wait a minute, what happened here? I mean, is 9.63, you go, yeah, that's just, you know, there's overruns. I mean, is there some, I guess, arbitrary number where we kind of go, wait a minute, we need to explore this further, or how does that work?
So that's a great question, Shane. And actually, we have a performance goal that we track every year, and we don't want to see cost growth on projects exceed 7%. Historically, we've been down around 4 to 5% for the year. What you're seeing with the 9%, it's the makeup or the mix of those projects, and just coincidentally, we had 1 or 2 in those that happened to overrun a little more than the others. So it's a great question, and if you want more specifics about why that's higher, I'll be more than happy to dig into it a little more and get you more information if you'd like.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I guess I was just trying to figure out, you know, parameters. Do we go, we need to take a further look at this, but yeah, I'll talk to you offline about it. Thanks.
Sure, no problem. Thank you, sir.
Jake?
Okay. Well, thanks, Dwayne. Thanks, Kevin. And good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I very much appreciate the time that of your time to present some of our alternative contracting programs. And I just want to touch on how we're organized a little bit. You'll see since we love acronyms so much, you'll see the ECCB, which is the Engineering Construction Contracting Bureau, or as you see on the screen, short for Construction Contracting Bureau. And that bureau, all of our projects are advertised and let through the Construction Contracting Bureau. For those of you that have been around in the past, it used to be contract plans, where we've changed it and reorged a little bit, where it's now Construction Contracting Bureau. Our alternative contracting section is under the Contracting Bureau. So now all of our contracts run through this ECCB or Construction Contracting Bureau. Hopefully, I'm looking at 2 screens, and hopefully when I advance slides, ooh, it works. Excellent. So kind of in line with what Kevin talked about early on is I'm gonna split this up a little bit, and I'll just give a quick overview of all of our current delivery methods and how we currently deliver projects. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on design, build, and job order contracting. And then I'm going to save the construction manager, general contractor process or program, the CMGC program, and what we call our project delivery selection tool, or PDSP. I'll save that for the February 18th meeting. So I'm happy to answer questions about any of those today if you have them, but I will present more detail on those bottom 2 next week. So just to talk through our current project delivery methods, as you guys are aware, design, bid, build has been and always will be our standard delivery method. We deliver about 95% of our projects through that standard process, and it's standard low bid selection. We advertise through the Construction Contracting Bureau, the bid package, contractors bid on it, and then we present it to you all for award. And that was the conference call last week was exactly that. Contractors bid the project, we review those bids, and then we present those to you as the lowest responsive bidder for award. Once awarded, then the project goes through the contracting and out to the districts for construction. Job order contracting is technically an alternative contracting method. However, it does follow standard design bid build and low bid selection. And I'll get into a little more detail on that in a minute. And then same with design build. I'll talk about that in more detail. And we less than about 5% of our projects go through design build, just for comparison's sake. And then CMGC, or construction manager, general contractor, that's our new pilot program. The legislature gave us approval for 4 projects in a pilot program, and we have completed 1 project. We're currently in the middle of delivering 2, and then the reason I was going to hold off until next week to present is we have our 4th project that has gone through that PDSP process, or the project delivery selection tool, and it will become our 4th CMGC project. So I'm going to present that to you next week, along with the PDSP process. And
Mr. Chairman, I got a question for Jake quickly.
Sure.
Jake, I'm just curious as to why less than 5% of our projects are done through design build delivery method.
Good question. Good question, Chair or Commissioner. We don't have a lot of projects that we fit through that program. We average about 3 to 6 projects a year. We've recently kind of ramped that up. When we first started our program, and I'll talk a little bit about the history in a minute, but when we first started the program, we really did 1 project a year, maybe 2, and we actually had a plan for how we were going to deliver 1 project every year, just to keep it in the industry, keep our knowledge up, and it's grown over time. And so there aren't a ton of projects that fit well into that process, and there's a handful each year that we try to deliver through design build. And again, I'll talk about our projects and the process a little bit more upcoming, and if that spurs more questions, maybe I can better answer it in that section. So is that helpful?
Yeah, that's a little helpful. I'll have a whole lot more questions. This is about the time in which everybody shakes their head about having 2 engineers on the commission.
If I could,
please.
I apologize for that.
I would just add, Scott, that really that's what our project delivery selection process is about, is choosing the right delivery method for the right job. And really, the majority of the projects that we do in our department fit really nicely into design bid build. If you cram a job like that into design build, it's not appropriate. It can be clunky and inefficient. Some of the design build stuff we do is rest areas because we don't have any internal expertise on that, no architect. And then it's a great tool if you need to rapidly deliver a project. So I guess my view is that we use it only when it's really appropriate for us to.
Yeah, and I mean, just my general questions early on here are going to be a lot around our delivery methods, and I'm glad the legislature finally allowed for CMGC, and I'll be interested to see how that goes. But these different delivery methods that we've been using outside of state government for a long time, even on the local government level, are something I'm going to be curious as to why we're not doing that more at the state level. And there is likely great explanation for it. I'll be asking that question a lot, I guess.
Okay, well, yeah, we appreciate that, and thanks for the questions. Thanks for filling in there, Kevin. I appreciate it. So moving into our design build program, and I'm just going to touch really quickly on the history. We did develop design build under a pilot program very similar to CMGC. It was the the 2003 legislature approved us to deliver a pilot program. We developed our guidelines in 04 based off a couple of other states. Minnesota and Florida had a very robust program. We borrowed their guidelines and modified those to fit Montana. We completed our 3 pilot projects in 2005 and 2006, and then presented at the 2007 legislature and got approval to use design build at that time. So since then we've delivered about 44 projects. We're in the middle of a couple, and I'll talk about those in a second as well, but 44 to date. And we've delivered projects from, I think the smallest was a rest area rehab for around $800,000 up to a major interstate, major rehab on the interstate north of Helena that was a little over $17 million. And just to step through our process a little bit, and a little bit of detail in our process, our current process for delivering design build or presenting design build to the commission has changed, and could change again slightly based on the draft legislation that's out. But what we plan to do moving forward is that project delivery selection tool that I mentioned. That's really a guide. It's a systematic process that we can run any project through, and there's a set of parameters that it looks at, and it will tell us what's the most appropriate method to deliver this specific project. And it looks at specific things like the schedule, potential for innovation, risk. There's a few other items, but it really guides us to pick the right tool for the right project. And Kevin kind of touched on that. We want to avoid running every project through design build if it's not appropriate, or not using design build when that may be a better delivery method. So we use this whenever a project comes to alternative contracting. We run it through the PDSP. We're going to present that to you and for information and show you why this project is appropriate for this delivery method, and why it's the right choice for that project, and then how that choice matches the MCA. So choosing design build, there's a set of factors in the code that we're going to show this is why it meets those factors in the code. So that will be our presentation, and then in addition to that, we'll present the proposed stipend amount, and I'll talk about the stipend here in a second. But that's changed slightly. We have not followed that in the past very well, and that will be our process moving forward. So you'll see that on future design build projects. So then once approved, once the commission approves the stipend amount, then we jump into our two-step process, and that's the standard industry or relatively standard industry process of an RFQ first, and then an RFP to follow, or request for qualifications. Really just lines out a very brief description of the project. Any interested firms respond with a statement of qualifications. A technical review committee reviews those statements of qualification and shortlist the top between 3 and 5 firms is what our code allows. We generally shortlist 3 firms. I believe twice in our design build history we've shortlisted 4 firms. Very seldom, but occasional if they're really close, we'll shortlist up to 4 or up to 5, but we've never had that many. The shortlisted firms receive the request for proposals, and then they develop their technical proposal and a bid price proposal, which are two separate proposals at separate times. That technical review committee, it's specific to each project, and it's the subject matter experts specific to that project type, and they review that technical proposal and score it based on a set of scoring criteria that are included in the RFP. And again, it's very project specific. So a bridge project would have bridge engineers reviewing it, geotech engineers for the foundation treatment, and so on. If it's a rest area, it's a different committee, different level of, or different type of subject matter experts. We then have a selection committee that oversees that technical review committee. Just for oversight, the selection committee is the construction engineer, the district administrator where the project's located, a bureau chief or program manager for that specific project, and then the district construction engineer who will effectively administer the contract when it goes to construction. So they oversee the process, review those technical scores from the technical review committee, and make sure everything's above board, we're following our process. And then the last couple steps, the technical proposals are scored and finalized, and then once those are approved, then we open the bid prices. And it's important distinction that we approve the scores before we ever see any prices, so we're not confusing the two or scoring based on price. And then it is a design build as a best value selection, so not low bid. It's a best value selection, and there's a calculation done between the technical proposal score and the bid price, and what we're looking for is the highest scoring technical proposal with the lowest price, and that is the best value for the taxpayer. And then, as I said, the stipend, so we do pay a stipend to the unsuccessful firms. The unsuccessful responsive firms receive the stipend, and it's a partial compensation for their for developing their proposals. It's roughly, and this is very rough, it's about 1% of the construction cost, and it generally covers about 25 to 50% of the level of effort that the firms put into those proposals. And then moving on, Kevin kind of touched on this a little bit, just a kind of a normal projects or projects we see often through design build, our annual rest area program. There's a set aside pot of funding that improves our rest areas across the state. Because we don't have an architect on staff, and because our construction staff are not, their expertise is in transportation, not in buildings, we do deliver a lot of our design build, or a lot of our rest area projects with design build, because we can pass that expertise on to the design build firm. ADA transition plans, we do projects design bid build for ADA, a lot of them, and then there are a few we do with design build. We found a lot of efficiency with letting a project in a community that has several locations for ADA upgrades, and the design build team can really use their expertise in sequencing those projects, delivering the easy sites very quickly, and then designing the more complex sites while they're constructing the easy sites. It seems a very efficient process for our ADA projects. And then Kevin touched on it, it's really one of the biggest benefits to design build is the fast track delivery. We can deliver a project in as little as 2 months from advertisement to award. And the biggest benefit is the money is obligated before the RFP is issued, so that the dollars are basically spent before the RFP is sent to the shortlisted firms, which spends that money basically, and then we move into the construction phase, and that's the fast track delivery. We have used it to deliver some emergency projects. We've had some slides occur on roadways and added those as a design build contract. We can easily or quickly deliver those. And then another big benefit to design build is contractor innovation. So having the contractor involved in the design is a huge benefit for means and methods, innovation, sequencing, schedule, those kind of things. So that's it. I'm going to stop just for a second. Design build. That's kind of all I was going to present for design build. Any questions or anything to add from anybody else?
Question from Shane, District 2. And maybe this is something you can't answer because you either do a design build or you design bid build, but do you find that design builds are more cost effective? In other words, do you typically think they're going to be a cheaper way of getting business done, or can you tell me that's a yes or no?
Yeah, Commissioner, thanks for the question. I used to run the alternative contracting section for years, and in the previous couple of roles, and I did for quite a few years track the cost of a design build project versus a design build. Very similar. Obviously, they're not apples to apples because it's separate projects, but in the past, I think people thought we were paying a premium for design build projects because there's quite a large team, engineers, architects, possibly consultant and contractors, and so the team is larger, so you pay a little bit more in PE costs, but in the end, what I found is the comparison to similar projects, it was a wash, where you got innovation in the design, you got innovations in the construction, which made it a little less expensive. Also, we spend a little less in CE than normal, so there was offsetting costs from normal projects. So I would answer that question to say it's not any cheaper either way, or not less expensive either way.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it. So really, that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is for the four reasons you have listed there. It's really not a cost consideration is not part of the decision process. And
yes, that I would say that is a correct summary. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and I'll jump in, just be real quick here. Job order contracting, as I said, is technically a type of alternative contracting, just in the way that it's set up. But it is delivered under normal design bid build delivery. We do these projects run through our normal design process. They're advertised in our Construction Contracting Bureau, and they're awarded to the low bid responsive contractor. You actually will see in Dwayne's presentation or Dwayne's discussion of the letting list, there's a project, I think in July, that's an upcoming JOC contract. And what these are is they're fairly small projects, limited scope of work, and very repetitive type of projects. So an example is signing work or delineation type of projects, where they're fairly small projects. What we do is we put them into a fairly simple biddable package. The contractor bids them. There's only a few contract items that they bid, and they know that there's a guaranteed amount in that original contract, and then we have the option to add future work, add future quantity to that project, and we just change order that into the work. We have the bid prices that the contractor bid originally, and what that does is it allows us to eliminate a lot of the procurement costs on our side. Some of these projects are very small. I mean, $5,000 to $20,000 or $50,000 total cost for construction for some of these projects, and we'll spend that much in PE developing them. So if we can cut that cost, it's much more efficient for delivery costs. And then we have the price built in. We can just add that work to the contract as those future projects are completed and ready to go. What they do is, or what we see a lot, is an increased responsiveness. So a couple of examples: emergency projects. We've had some bridge deck issues in recent years where we've had some cracking or holes in the bridge deck. We've had actually some JOC contracts for bridge deck rehab out on the street already. So when those occur, we can very quickly then just add that work to the job order contract, and the contractor can get out and fix that site very quickly, as long as we have one out on the ground already. Similar to timing restrictions, if you are aware of, there's a Migratory Bird Treaty Act that only allows us to clear and grub a certain time of the year. So there's a timing restriction that starts April 15th, and we can't clear and grub between April 15 and August 15. And so if a project slips in a letting, and the contractor, it's a reconstruct, and they have to clear and grub, and they can't get out and clear and grub before April 15th, that could potentially be a big delay in construction of that project. So we have these job order contracts out there that allow us to pull the work out of that reconstruct, do it under the job order contract, do the clearing and grubbing, get the project ready for the contractor. When that larger contract is bid, then there's no delay in that contract. Those are just a couple of examples of that responsiveness. And then just a couple other project example types. As I said, deck repair, signing, delineation projects. And then there's several timber piling or timber bridges throughout the state, and some of the piling have reached their, we're having issues with them, I guess. And so we have a job order contract where we're going out and repairing those piling. We're just sleeving them, repairing those timber piles. It just is a way to rehab without letting a contract to get out and do it specific to each location. So that was pretty quick. Thanks for your time. Any other questions or comments I'm happy to take, and just want to reiterate, I will talk about CMGC and the project delivery next week, but I'm happy to answer questions about it if anybody has any now.
Hearing nothing, I think Val, it's on to you then.
Let me stop sharing, Val. Okay. Thank you very much.
Val, I think you're muted. I'm not hearing you. I don't know if anybody else is.
Negative. Yeah, we're not hearing anything.
You're not showing muted, but we're not hearing you.
I guess Val really didn't want to talk to you guys that much.
No.
Mac, you got a joke while we're waiting for Val to log back in?
I certainly do. I've started investing in stocks, beef, chicken, and vegetables. I hope someday to be a billionaire. Boom, boom. Not good jokes, but I have jokes.
Okay.
And Val, we're not hearing you still. Looks like she's going to try to log back in.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, well, I'm going to try to share my screen. So this final block of instruction is on legal issues, and this is related to Montana's public participation requirements, right to know, and then a brief discussion on conflict of interest. So let me try sharing my screen too. And okay, so everyone can see the slides?
Yep, Val.
Perfect. Thank you. So just briefly, okay, so Montana's right of participation. So Article 2, Section 8 of Montana's Constitution establishes the public's right to participation in public actions. And so the constitutional requirement provides that the public has the right to expect governmental agencies to afford opportunity for citizens to participate before they make a final decision. And so we comply with this through our commission secretary. Lori publishes the notice of time, date, and place, and the subject matter for each meeting. And then the commission does its part by only discussing or taking action on items that are noticed on the agenda. So that's the right of participation. So Article 2, Section 9 is the companion provision that establishes Montana's right to know. And it provides that the public has the right to examine documents and observe the deliberations of all of the public bodies and state government. And so when we break that down, this is a pretty powerful provision. And the open meetings, they seem pretty concrete, but they can be a little tricky. And a meeting is any time that you have a quorum of the commission, and under Title II, a quorum is 3. It includes use of, obviously, Zoom, which is noticed today, your telephonic meetings, like the one that you participated in last Tuesday, but also can include email discussions or deliberations on commission matters. So, for instance, if you have a discussion about an action item that is coming up, if the commissioners are copying each other or discussing back and forth in the email, just beware that you could be in violation of the open meeting statutes. So there's been discussions on this in front of the Supreme Court. As early as 2013, there were planning boards were conducting official business or via email that wasn't open to the public. And in that case, the court found that it was cured by the actions of the county commissioners, but did caution that conducting official business by email can expose you to claims of violating open meetings actions. So the safe harbor on this, the takeaway and my recommendation is that you save discussions and deliberation for official meetings. And if you have email traffic that's going back and forth between commissions, the general rule, and this goes into the public document area, is to copy Lori on those so that there is some official record of those discussions. So, so then the other thing is, now that's internal commission to commission discussions, but then there's the issue of outside communication. And so that's when a person with an interest in a matter that comes before the commission, maybe a contractor, either talks or writes or otherwise directly communicates with the commissioner. And so, so the rule on that is to disclose that you've had that communication, and just it doesn't have to be very detailed, but before you take action on that matter, and also retain those official records. Now, I'm not sure if I can get this to move over, but it's just a reminder to me of the importance of this email business. So, so this is not moving over, but what it is, it's an article from the Billings Gazette that's from February of 2017, and it was when there was a request for public information made of Governor Bullock's email account, his personal email account, because he was sending and conducting state business on his personal email account, and all of that stuff was discoverable. And the rule on that is that there's no prohibition from using private email to conduct state business, but that those email accounts are subject to the same disclosure requirements as a state email account. So, so the takeaway from this is that if you have emails that are with a contractor or someone who's, you know, maybe a local government, somebody who's interested in commission business, those emails must be retained as public records. And so, again, the safe harbor on that is that you can't control who's sending emails to you, but you can control your response. And so your response would be, you know, to respond to that that person, either local official or even a private person, and CC Lori, because Lori does have a method of keeping those communications intact. Now, that doesn't absolutely protect your personal emails. If somebody, you know, for whatever reason, there's a big controversy arises, you know, you would still be subject to reviewing those personal emails, but if you're conducting business and looping in the commission secretary, that is the best practice on that. And I have had some discussion with the deputy director about establishing state email accounts for the commission to conduct their official business, and that's not out of the question. If that's something that you're interested in, you need to let us know. It would just be a matter of conducting some training on our IT policies, and then of course other issues probably, but certainly it's something that should be considered if you find yourself conducting a lot of commission business on emails. So the remedy, right, for violating open meetings laws or public records laws is that the court may void a commission decision if it finds that you are not complying with that open meeting provision. And then of course there's always the attorney fees that would be available to the public if they file in district court to get those public records, or to void a decision that was discussed, deliberated, or decided at a matter that violated open meetings laws. So that is really a short, concise look at your requirements under those two constitutional provisions. Do you have any questions? Okay. Hearing none, then we're going to move on to ethics and conflicts of interest. So, so this is another area that is constitutionally prescribed. And so Montana's Constitution, Article 13, Section 4, provides that the legislature shall provide a code of ethics prohibiting conflict between public duty and private interest. And that seems pretty clear and great public policy. And so under the statutes, the ethical requirements for public officers and employees are set forth. And there's three main areas that I want to bring to your attention. So there is, of course, there's sometimes relational conflicts of interest, and then there's the financial conflicts of interest. So under the statute, and as interpreted by the Attorney General's opinions and the Supreme Court, that an official action on a matter that would give rise to an appearance of impropriety as to the public employee's influence must be disclosed. So if you, maybe have had conversations with a contractor on a particular case, and there may not be any actual conflict, but maybe an appearance of conflict or appearance of impropriety, you should disclose that on the record before you take a vote on that issue. And then there's the financial aspect. And so, so under the statutes, public employees may not perform an official act directly and substantially affecting a competing firm to its detriment. So, so that's an area that's a absolute prohibition, and you must recuse yourself. And then the final area that I wanted to bring to your attention is that a public employee may not perform an official act directly and substantially affecting a business in which the employee has a financial interest to its benefit. And again, under that scenario, the recommendation is to recuse yourself. So there's a bit of a complication because there are some exceptions for quasi-judicial and rulemaking boards, and they have a exception if your participation is necessary to administer a statute. And so that's been interpreted if there is not a quorum without your vote. And in the case of a financial interest, there is a way around that, but there's a reporting requirement. And what that amounts to is before you would take any action under that exception, that you would need to file a report with the commission, the Commissioner of Political Practices. And it's a disclosure of whatever interest that you may have in a business or firm, the duration of that, and it's the same information that that the Commissioner of Political Practices would request of a candidate for office. So it's pretty in depth, and it's public information. So so there is that report provision. My advice is every time, if there's a financial interest, recuse yourself. If that's that's the safe harbor. If you, I mean, and again, I need to tell you that this conflict of interest area is, a lot of it is just really up to you, because there's no one that knows your situation and your relationships like you do. So, so if you have any questions, I mean, you can certainly call me, visit with me about it. And again, there is that workaround on the report, but my my advice would be to recuse yourself every time, because I think it would be hard to prove with 5 commissioners that your vote was required for a particular action. So, so that is the conflicts of interest piece. And actually, I think we've gone just a little bit over, but that's the conclusion. If you have any questions, please let me know. Any discussion on the legal piece? All right, Director?
Thank you, Val. I just want to say thank you again to the commissioners. We appreciate your time, your effort, your energy. We have a wonderful department here that is at your service. Anything you need to know, if we don't have it by that commission meeting, we will get it to you. We have a lot of resources, a lot of both physical resources, and we have incredible, what we used to call corporate knowledge, but we call it institutional knowledge here, that we've done this, we know it, we monitor it. Jake had a great example of, well, yes, I'm glad you asked that, Commissioner Aspenleiter, because we have looked at that. So a lot of your questions we have looked at, but please ask them, bring them up, and don't stop asking them. We're always trying to improve and get better. Part of our charge from our governor is to increase efficiency and increase customer satisfaction. And you 5 are direct links to our districts and to that. So please, we count on you guys. Be in touch all you can in your areas, and Scott, you even get to go over a little bit because you have some knowledge about Culbertson and District 4. So I know you get to do. Rod doesn't necessarily want to share, but you cross whether you want to or not. So thank you guys, and we appreciate it, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much. We do appreciate it, and hopefully the roads and weather will get better, so we'll all be here next week.
Okay.
And I'll open it up to any questions. Yes, Lauren.
I just had a comment. I look forward to serving with the other members on the commission. We have a very diversified group. I look forward to hearing opinions from everybody, because we do all come from different backgrounds, and some of the best decisions that are ever made are the ones that are debated very well. And like I said, I'm open to that. I don't expect all of us to be consensus and all 5 vote together every time. That's the reason there's 5. It's because you need a majority of at least 3. But no, it's that diverse background, and I think that's what makes this work. I look forward to working with everybody and a lot of members of the department. It's good to be in touch with you all again. It's like coming back to family.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. Anyone else? Well, it looks like Tammy has some sunshine over in her part of the state.
Yeah, it's deceiving. It's still only 1 degree outside.
But that's a positive. Most of us.
That's right. I'll take what I can get.
Yeah, most of us are in the negatives. So
True.
Yeah, looking around from the backgrounds, I think I'm the only one that's working out of the COVID attic. Like I said, got all the stuff up here that we don't use very often, like high chairs and everything else. But anyway.
good. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And can't wait to have you here next week, and we'll hit the ground running. And thank you to all the people at MDT who've helped both me and the commissioners get up to speed and be able to do our best job we can. We appreciate it. And I want to give you a special thanks. I'm sure grateful, even if my jokes don't always show it.
I do have one quick question for Lauren. Do you believe in Bigfoot?
No, but I have a friend of a cousin who hunts them professionally. He has a website and people donate, and that's where the t-shirt comes from.
I just wanted to know if I want to let my daughter know if there's someone on the commission that actually believed in it. So,
well, no, I do have a friend of a cousin in Oregon that is a professional Bigfoot hunter.
last thing is that we had all these recommendations. So, do we have to take action on those? Are we doing those next week, or what's the status there?
Next week. Next
Okay.
week. We'll go over this officially next week. So,
all right.
This was just to bring everyone up to speed. So next week should be a piece of cake.
Wonderful.
Well, if that's it, we'll conclude and say goodbye and have a good week, and see you everyone next week.
Peace out.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.